Hi, this is Gabe from FluentForever.com. In this second video, we're going to talk about Arabic's consonants, and Mustafa will be helping us with the examples.
Hi.
So Arabic has 29 consonants. If you speak English, 16 of these are going to be familiar sounds, 7 are going to be slightly modified versions of familiar sounds, and 6 more are going to be really new for you. As we get into these consonants, I'll be giving you a bunch of example words. And while we'll provide the Arabic spelling for each word, for now, feel free to ignore that and focus on the IPA, since that's going to be much more useful while we're focusing on individual consonants. We'll be starting with 9 really straightforward sounds and IPA symbols.
So there's B as in Burj, F as in Faras, H as in Hilal, K as in Kalb, M as in Madrasah, N as in Noor, S as in Samak, W as in Walad, and Z as in Zuhur.
Now, there are 7 consonants that will sound familiar, although they have new IPA symbols.
This symbol, which looks like a lowercase j, is Arabic's y as in yamama, or English's yard. Then comes j as in Arabic's jamal, or English's jam.
This is a D and a J sound combined in one. In IPA, the D will look familiar to you, and that J sound looks like kind of the top half of a Z with a little loop hanging off of it.
J. Next we have sh, as in Arabic's shams, or English's shoe.
In IPA, it's a tall, scripty S.
Then comes th, as in Arabic's dhib, or English's them or that.
It's a buzzing sound made with your tongue against your upper teeth, and in IPA, it's like a backwards 6 thing with a line through it.
Our next consonant is th, as in Arabic's thalj, or English's thick.
It's made in the same spot as th. The only difference is that your vocal cords aren't going to be buzzing. In IPA, it's an O with a line through it, or a theta.
Our second to last sound is l, as in Allah, or mole.
In IPA, this sound is a lowercase l with a line coming through it, and it's pronounced in 2 spots in your mouth. The front of your tongue comes up near your front teeth, l, and the back of your tongue raises up too, l. Now remember that, since we're going to come back to this sound in just a minute. Our last familiar sound is an odd little character known as a glottal stop. It's
A, as in Arabic's akalu, or English's uh-oh.
in between the and the o. Uh-oh. Actually, it's also in the beginning of the The glottal stop is what happens when your vocal cords will slam shut or pop open on a vowel. In English, we often use this popping open glottal stop thing for emphasis, or rather for emphasis. Arabic, on the other hand, uses glottal stops all over the place.
It's a full-on consonant, showing up at the beginning of words like akalu, between vowels in the middle of words like ra'is, before consonants in the middle of words like ra's, and even at the end of words, al-ahya.
But the sound is exactly the same as in English's uh-oh. Just happens a lot more frequently in Arabic. In IPA, it's basically a question mark without that dot on the bottom. At this point, we're more than halfway through. We're now going to learn 7 consonants that take a sound you know and slightly change it.
First off, let's come back to l, as in Allah, or mole.
Here, Arabic and English have basically the same L. They're made in the same way with your tongue up and in the front and in the back.
L, Allah. But that's only for the extremely common word Allah.
For every other L word in modern standard Arabic, the back of your tongue is going to stay down.
You get Allah rather than Allah.
So the IPA symbol you're going to see 99% of the time in Arabic is just a lowercase l. There's no line coming through it. And it means you're going to bring the front of your tongue up by your upper front teeth, and the back of your tongue is going to stay all the way down.
L, as in laymoon.
Okay, so next, let's talk about 2 consonants that look like a D and a T in IPA.
There's D as in dub and T as in tamr.
These 2 consonants are slightly different from their English counterparts, mostly in terms of their tongue placement.
If you're comparing these consonants between English and Arabic, you can say deen and deen.
If you pay close attention, you'll notice that in the English word, the very tip of your tongue hits your alveolar ridge, that ridge right behind your upper front teeth.
Deen.
But in Arabic, the tip of your tongue will flatten out a bit, so that the tip of your tongue actually touches your upper teeth and the blade of your tongue. That part right behind the tip is what's touching your alveolar ridge.
This gives you a less percussive sound. You get deen instead of deen.
It's exactly the same for Arabic's T.
Instead of teen, you get teen.
And it's, again, a less percussive sound because your tongue's all the way forward. So, our next stop. This involves 4 consonants that we'll cover in one big group, and this group is known as the emphatic consonant group in Arabic.
The 4 consonants are صاد, ضاد, طا, and ظا, as in صدف, ضرس, طير, and ظرف.
You'll notice in IPA that all 4 of these consonants are actually consonants we've covered already. There's S, D, T, and Th. Just all of those 4 emphatic consonants have this additional backwards question mark looking thing. That mark tells you to do one main thing. It tells you to pull the back of your tongue up and back towards your uvula, that hangy downy thing in the back of your throat.
So da goes to ضا.
Now, the most obvious effect of this, the one you can hear the best, is that the vowel that comes afterwards sounds a lot different.
We started with a, and then we got a, da, ضا.
But the consonant itself changes too. You can perhaps hear that if we stick these consonants at the end of a word.
And compare to words like بعد and بعض.
The tongue position of the second one is further back in the mouth.
There's one last thing these emphatic consonants do, which is a little easier to hear with T.
Usually anytime you say something like ta, there's a moment after the T starts, where air is just kind of flowing out. T, t, and then the vowel starts, ta. If I really over-exaggerate it, it sounds like ta, ta. And if I get rid of it completely, then I get a kind of Italian sounding ta, ta. Anytime you have an Arabic emphatic consonant, you're going to go to the next vowel quickly, with a lot of oomph behind it.
Rather than teen, you get teen. And in the case of T in particular, you're going to the vowel so quickly that you're going to skip that puff of air entirely. You'll start that T with your tongue pulled up and back, to, to, and then you'll go straight to the vowel, teen, teen.
So, just to give you some contrasts, we're going to contrast all 4 emphatic consonants with their non-emphatic siblings.
There's سار and صار, بعد and بعض, teen and طين, and ذل and ظل.
With that, we are now ready to cover our last 6 consonants, which are going to be pretty new to most English speakers.
Our first sound is Arabic's R, which you'll find in the front of your mouth.
The basic form of this consonant is very similar to what you'd find in Spanish or Italian. It uses the familiar looking lowercase r in IPA, and it's known as the trilled R.
It sounds like R, as in رجل.
For this consonant, your tongue goes right up against your alveolar ridge. It softens a bit to allow air to come through, and as that air comes through, it will vibrate your tongue up and down against that ridge. There are a lot of tricks to producing this consonant, which you can find all over YouTube. The best one I've heard so far for pronouncing this consonant is to think the phrase Prince of Prussia while you are saying Prince of Prussia. You replace all those R's with D's. And then you kind of play around until your tongue starts to cooperate. Prince of Prussia, Prince of Prussia, Prince of Prussia. And this can take weeks or even months. This thing can honestly be a bit of a pain to get right. Now, for this consonant in Arabic, we've talked a lot about what's going on with the tip of your tongue, and that's because that's the most important part of this consonant. If you get that right, you'll be understood. But there's one small nuance I want you to listen for.
And that's the difference between R in رجل and R in رجل. The first one is R, R, and the second one is R, R.
In terms of tongue position, the first one has the back of the tongue pulled further back in the mouth, kind of like you do with Arabic's emphatic consonants.
R, R.
And the second one is more relaxed in the back, but has the middle of your tongue high up in your mouth, kind of where you say E, Y, E. And this produces a higher pitched sound.
R, R.
So which do you use when? Well, fortunately, the main rule here is to be lazy. You want to move your tongue as little as possible.
If your next vowel is E,
where the middle of your tongue is high up in your mouth already,
then you do the R with the higher tongue positioned in the middle, R. But if your next vowel is U or A, where your tongue is further back in your mouth, then you do the R with the lower further back tongue position, R. And if the R has no vowel after it, like in NAR, then you do the R that's closest in position to the vowel that comes beforehand, NAR.
you'll find that this isn't something you need to think much about. It'll come pretty naturally, especially once you know that the two R's exist, which is why we're talking about it right now. For the rest of our consonants, we're going to play around in the back of your mouth.
First up, as in khubz.
To make this sound, bring your tongue up near where you'd say K.
But instead of touching your soft palate with the back of your tongue, just get close to the soft palate and let air squeeze by. That gives you khubz.
Now, in that same spot, if you do the exact same thing with your tongue, but you engage your vocal cords,
You'll get Arabic's as in غابة.
to find it, instead of starting with K, you can start with K's voiced sibling, G.
G. And with a little space between your tongue and soft palate. غابة.
Now, let's drift further back in the mouth, all the way back to your uvula, that hangy-downy thing that you can see at the back of your throat. Now, Arabic has a K-like sound that's produced all the way back there.
That's ق, as in قلب. If you want to compare this ق sound to a k sound, you can compare قل and كل. قل, كل, ق, ك.
We have two last consonants, which will go even further back in your mouth. The first is currently my favorite consonant that I know of.
It's ح, as in حداد.
So, I want to explain a little bit about why this is my favorite consonant. I spent a bunch of time with this consonant, listening to words, using it, and watching videos and researching it, and I became really frustrated with it. You see, this consonant is made way down in your throat, down past your tongue.
This is your epiglottis, and Arabic's ha is made by constricting your throat and epiglottis together,
so that the air makes a hissing sound. Now, telling you to constrict your epiglottis is kind of like telling you to flex your spleen. It's just not very useful if you've never done it before and you don't know how to control those muscles. But fortunately, this is actually something you've done before, which is why this is now my favorite consonant. You know, when you've had a really hot day and you grab an ice cold soda, and you drink some and you go, ah. Now, that sound you're making is not just a simple exhalation of air. You don't drink a soda and go, ah. You go, ah, making this high-pitched hissing sound, which happens to be an epiglottal fricative. So, surprise, this isn't actually a new consonant at all. It's one you've never used in the context of a word, but it's something you've actually done a lot.
You'll find it in words like حداد, رحلة, and ملح. And if you want to compare it to the more familiar sounding you can compare حلل and حلل.
And with that, we've reached our final consonant, which is a doozy. It is the hardest consonant in any language I've encountered so far, honestly. In IPA, it looks kind of like a backwards question mark, and we will start with a bunch of examples so you can get a feel for what it sounds like.
That's ع, as in عين, عتل, شمعة, بعد, سمع, معصرة, عصفور.
The reason this consonant is hard to pronounce is because of its location. It's not really articulated using your tongue at all. Just like our previous consonant, it's actually down by your epiglottis. The whole throat around that area gets narrow for this consonant, and the voice box itself raises up a bit to close down the space a bit more. There's a wonderful Arabic teacher on YouTube, Maha, I'll link her below, who describes this consonant as choking yourself with your own throat. I even quoted her in my book. And the best way I've found so far to get that feeling of choking yourself is actually to keep playing around with our previous consonant, aha, since that's something you already know how to do, and it happens to be in the right place in your throat. So, as an example, I can keep going, aha, aha, and then see if I can constrict it further, aha, aha, until you're actually preventing yourself from breathing. Aha, aha. And by doing that, you're basically teaching your throat muscles how to choke themselves. And once you can do that, it becomes a little easier to copy recordings and then eventually to learn how to pronounce it correctly. As with any difficult consonant, the better you can learn to hear it, the better you'll be able to produce it. And I think there are at least two sets of minimal pairs that can be really, really useful for teaching your ears how to hear that. The first is comparing it to a glottal stop, which is even low in your throat.
أمل versus عمل, or أرق and عرق. And the second is comparing to ح, حالم, عالم, and حبق, عبق.
I'll attach MP3s of those four pairs below so you can download them separately and kind of practice. All in all, I think the best route to a good ayn is to first Play with those minimal pairs, listen to them a whole bunch, and get them in your ear.
Then play with ha and see if you can constrict your throat in that same spot even more.
I'd recommend exercising by constricting it more and then less and then more and then less. So you do something like ah, 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 and practice that a little bit each day. If you do too much, you're going to lose your voice. And then go back to those minimal pairs and practice repeating them. And I think that's going to be a pretty efficient way to learn how to make this sound. It will take you some time, but I think you'll get there. And so with that, we've covered all of Arabic's consonants. To review, we started off with a bunch of familiar sounds and IPA symbols.
There was b as in burj, f as in faras, h as in hilal, k as in kalb, m as in madrasah, n as in nur, s as in samak, w as in walad, and z as in zuhur.
Then we went into 7 consonants with familiar sounds that had somewhat unfamiliar IPA symbols.
Y as in yamamah, j as in jamal, sh as in shams, th as in dhib, th as in thalj, l as in Allah.
That's a sound that's made in the same spot as English's L, but only shows up in this one single but very common word.
And the glottal stop.
Which shows up in English in the word uh-oh.
And in Arabic in words like ra'is, ra's, and al-ahya.
We then went to sounds that were modifications of sounds that you do already know.
First, we talked about l as in laymoon,
which is an L made with only the tip of your tongue. The back goes down. And that is the normal L you're going to be using throughout Arabic.
Then came d and t, as in dub and tamr.
These two sounds are really similar to English's D and T, but the tongue is a bit further forward. It's touching your upper teeth.
Dub, tamr.
Then we talked about the emphatic consonants.
Sad, dad, ta, and va, as in sadaf, dirs, tayr, and varf.
All 4 of these consonants took sounds you already knew, s, d, t, and th, and then modified the tongue position so that the back of your tongue was pulled towards your uvula.
So, sar goes to sar, ba'd goes to ba'd, teen goes to teen. And you'll notice with this one that there's no puff of air in the emphatic version. Teen. And last, dhal goes to dhal.
And after those, we covered 6 totally new consonants.
There was the rolled r, as in rajul,
which has your tongue up where you'd say a D, but allows the flow of air to flap it up and down.
R. Then we had kh, as in khubz.
Made in the exact same spot, you make a K, just you let a little bit more air through.
Instead of k, you get kh. Then there was gh, as in ghaba.
Made in that exact same spot with your vocal cords engaged.
Then came q, as in qalb,
which was a K-like sound that's made by bringing the back of your tongue to your uvula, even further back behind a K.
So you get q instead of k. So this one's qal rather than kal. Then we had h, as in haddad, rihla, and milh.
A sound made by constricting your throat below the base of your tongue at your epiglottis, which is what you will do naturally when you drink something cold. And finally, the trickiest of Arabic's consonants,
as in ayn, ba'd, usfur, or sam'a. It's made in the same spot as h.
But there's a bit more compression there, your vocal cords are active, and your voice box will raise a bit in your throat.
Ayn, ba'd.
And with that, we are through with Arabic's consonants. I hope you had fun with this. This one was quite the ride to create. And so I will see you next time to cover Arabic's vowels.